Hello, my name is Robbie Stakelum. My pronouns are he, him, and I am a policy officer with FEANTSA, the European umbrella group of homeless service providers in Europe, and I lead on our work on LGBTIQ homelessness. I think it's really important that homeless service providers and policymakers start focusing more on LGBTIQ issues within our broader work on the topic of homelessness. We know from data that we've had for many years from North America that between 20 to 40% of young people experiencing homelessness identify as LGBTIQ. In the last year, we have got data from the Fundamental Rights Agency, which gives us a very similar insight into the extent of LGBTIQ homelessness in Europe. For example, the Fundamental Rights Agency estimates that about 1 in 5 LGBTIQ people have had an experience of homelessness. They estimate that about 1 in 3 trans people have had experiences of homelessness, and this rises to about 40% of intersex people. And I think the challenge that we face in our work as the homeless sector is that often we hear and we see these figures and they feel very out of sync with our reality. Because LGBTIQ homelessness is also a hidden form of homelessness. We know, for example, that when LGBTIQ people come into services, they often don't feel safe. They have experiences of homophobia and transphobia. We know that there is an intersection between their sexual identity, their sexual orientation and gender identity, and other experiences of racism, misogyny, sexism, etc. If you ask homeless service providers how many people do you work with who identify as LGBTIQ, they would say very little. And yet we have this independent research that across North America and Europe shows us that LGBTIQ people are way overrepresented within our services. The causes for that are many. The triggers of homelessness can be very, very different for many different people. We know that there are causes around coming out and families evicting young people, for example, when they come out as gay, lesbian, when they start a transition, that can also be a trigger for young people to be formally evicted from their families into homelessness. We also know that LGBTIQ young people experience discrimination in the rental market. So even when they go to the rental market in certain countries, they can't get a rental lease if they are seen as particularly queer, for lack of a better phrase, or landlords don't want to rent to them, or people who are living in apartments don't want to bring in another housemate who might seem different to them. And so we see further experiences of homophobia and transphobia. In terms of what can actually be done, we know, and there's lots of experiences from France, England, the United States, and Canada around creating services that are more inclusive. And so, on the surface of that, that can mean having a statement of inclusivity on display. It can mean having a rainbow flag. It might mean having queer art. It is about creating a space that when an LGBTIQ young person walks into it, they feel like this is an environment that's for me. But it's more than that. You can't just smack a rainbow flag up on a wall and say, that's it, we're done, we're inclusive. You need to do training. You have to do training, and not just with social workers and the people who work with young people. We need to do it with social workers, all the staff within centres, boards of directors, senior managements, so that everybody fundamentally understands LGBTIQ identity, because the specific needs that come from that community have to be met and understood by everybody for the service to really feel inclusive and to empower those people to speak about their sexual orientation and gender identity. So I think when we look at what can we all be doing around LGBTIQ homelessness, better data collection, better training for homeless services, monitoring what is available in terms of service provision. Do we have enough housing? What is the type of housing we have created? Is it segregated? Is it trans inclusive? Do we have healthcare services that trans people can access? Do we have partnerships with the right mental health professionals that can provide the needed supports in an inclusive way?